Hello, divas, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I wanted to talk about every book that I read in 2024, but I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. I'm gonna try my best to do just like a sentence per book. We can do it. Yes? Are you ready to go on this adventure with me? Let's see how this goes. All right, the first book up is Northwoods. I loved this book. It took a hot second to get into, but once I was in, I was in. It was one of the New York Times top 5 fiction books of 2024. Absolutely worth the hype. The second book I read was Day. The prose was intoxicating, the concept was intriguing, and the plot was imperfect. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't recommend it. Next up was Horse. I kept starting and stopping this book, and I finally came back to it to finish it. The modern day Black male was so obviously written by a white woman that it eroded its success, and I didn't enjoy myself. I wouldn't suggest. Okay, next I read Black Cake. Listen, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good story. It needed a better editor. I don't know where they were. It needed a better editor. Next was None of This Is True. I enjoyed it. Listen, it's a fun mystery. It's a great, perfect beach read. Great for the beach. Between that and First Lie Wins, I actually might go with First Lie Wins, but I had a good time. Okay, next was In Memoriam. I thought the story was so beautiful, but in a different way, but similar to Horse, I felt like any of the intimacy between the two men were just so clearly written by a woman that it took me out. But I thought the story was nice. Overall, I enjoyed myself. The next book was The Idiot. One of my former students suggested this to me. I thought it was really wonderful. I thought it captured that coming of age in college so acutely. It was so painful and perfect without really dipping into like saccharine tropes. I really enjoyed myself. I thought it was really nice. Okay, Land of Milk and Honey, y'all. It was so incredibly sumptuous until the end. The end just kind of evaporated, and it made me so sad because the prose was incredible. It, it's hard for me to recommend because I just hated the ending so much, but everything up to the end was almost perfect. Okay, my friends, I have talked about this book ad nauseum. Like, yes, yes, yes. Go pick up your copy. Hello, yes. Oh my God, there's so many books everywhere. I don't even know. Okay. The Wren. This is, see, I'm just like throwing books around. The Wren. I really enjoyed this book. It was about a mother and a daughter, and it really explores kind of like the the wake of toxic men and like toxic what happens when toxic men move through space and like what they out like their fallout is. But I had a good time. All right, the one I knocked over, Eastbound. Listen, I don't know. I read it because it was the New York Times top 5 fiction books of 2024 or 2023. No, yeah, 2023, 2024, 2024. It's fine. I don't. I mean, it. I don't. It's. I wouldn't. It's whatever. It built nice tension. It did build tension really successfully, but like aside from that, it's whatever. Septology. Yes, this was my favorite read from 2024. I absolutely loved this book. It is an esoteric meditation on life and love and art and sex and duality and addiction. And be warned, it's like 700 pages and there's like not a period in sight, but incredible. The author won the Nobel Prize. Like, could not recommend higher. Oh, and speaking of which, The Warmth of Other Suns. This should be required reading for everyone in the United States. Well, everyone everywhere, but particularly if you live in the United States. Like, Isabel Wilkerson is a national treasure. I'm going to be making a whole video on this for Black History Month. The Warmth of Other Suns, you must read. You must read. You must read. And then for something totally different, right after that, I finished Bunny. Listen, it's fun, it's weird, it's like Jawbreaker meets Clueless meets a horror story. It's wild and weird, and it was a nice like reading break from the esoteric meditation on life, love, and art, and then the warmth of other suns, which was about the history of this country. So in that way, it was a nice break. But like, was it good? Yeah, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, the next one I read was The Discomfort of Evening. This book won the International Booker Prize in 2020. Dark, baby girls. Dark. Um, I enjoyed it. I think this author is incredible. I think he's very young, like shockingly young. Um, Dark. There's a lot of dark themes that are explored there. So you just got to steel yourself and be ready for that. But if you are, prose is incredible. Um, Stay tuned. I read one of his other ones, and yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay, next up I read was Martyr, one of my favorite reads of 2024. It was this beautiful tale of queerness and learning to love yourself and like having a coming of age, but like in middle life. Ugh, I just loved it so much. I would absolutely recommend. And before you start it, find somebody who's already read it, because the minute you finish it, you're going to want to talk to somebody about it. Okay, this was my heavenly favorite. Same author as The Discomfort of Evening. I This one in some ways was darker, which is saying a lot, but I felt like as a work, it was crafted a little bit better, like storytelling wise, beginning to end, than Discomfort of Evening. But it wasn't. I don't think it was even longlisted for the International Booker, which was surprising to me. Like when that list came out, I had assumed this would be on it because I felt like it was even better than Discomfort of Evening, and it wasn't. So again, if you're ready for some dark rural fiction, pick these up, but do a little bit of your own research first because they're intense. Okay, the next one up was James. Yes, read this book. It is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of Jim, the enslaved person. Here he goes by James. It's really lovely. It won the National Book Award. Yes, I love Percival Everett. Beautyland was next. This one, sure. I enjoyed myself. It's again, it's rife for a book club because the I said these were going to be one sentence long, and I'm like, some of them are going to be diatribes. It's good for a book club because it inspires a lot of like what the hell is happening conversations, but not in a way that's not digestible, but just in a way that's like, huh, what is this? Is it this? Is it this? Like what exactly is going on here? But I enjoyed myself. Yeah, I would say pick it up. Okay, now we're getting into international Booker long list territory, and some of these are on the short list. I'm going to be really honest; I don't fully remember, but I generally love that list. I translated literature as like I love so. But the first one I read from that grouping or from that award this season was the Crooked Plow, Brazilian. It had so much hype around it. We in this home, the royal we, did not feel that same hype. It was fine. It was fine. It lost its way like halfway through. It started really strong and then lost its way. And I don't know if I would suggest it. It didn't have the payoff for me. And the next one from that International Booker Prize list was Lost on Me, Italian novel about two friends. I enjoyed it. It wasn't something I am going to be taking with me for, a long time, but I enjoyed myself. Also from that list, What I'd Rather Not Think About. Now, this I really loved. It was about twins, and one of them dies. And I believe he unalives himself. And it is a fascinating collection of like almost vignettes. Like a lot of the prose is like collected in these like short segments. And I think it's done so brilliantly in that it really cares for the reader as it moves you through this very sad story and this very like touching tale. So in that way, I felt very taken care of as a reader, and I really enjoyed myself. Also from that grouping is Not a River. Listen, it was fine. I feel like it should have been stronger given its length. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it had the workings to be really successful, but I feel like it lost its way. Again, kind of like Crooked Plow. Like started strong, I was there, I was down, I was on that journey, and then it just didn't quite seal the deal for me. But now we have the International Booker Prize, a winner, which was Kairos. Absolutely one of my favorite reads of last year. It just, yes, 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 yes. It is a May December romance. And I think that the author so perfectly captures like what that feeling is. And when you're starting to get into a relationship with someone and like what you're thinking versus what they're thinking, and she presented them in this like brilliant way, like right at the same time where it would be like, oh, that's, I would want to know what that person was thinking at that moment, and I just think it's done really well. Yeah. The next one was Ministry of Time. Immediately no. Immediately no. I got halfway through and then I started hate reading it, and I was reading it for a book club, or hate reading it for a book club, and I started making like little notes to substantiate my opinion, meaning like the reasons why I did not think it was good about halfway through. And I just no. Next, I read my first Joyce Carol Oates, which was Butcher. Unfortunately, I didn't love it, which really bums me out because I was excited to read her. I loved her masterclass. And so we'll see. I'll have to find another one. If you all have a Joyce Carol Oates that you love, please let me know, because this, it didn't work. I mean, and basically, like if you read the book jacket, that is 90% of the book, if not all of it. And so that was what bummed me out. It was just like an expansion of a really good idea, but it didn't go any deeper than the book jacket. I'm really sorry. The next was Lie With Me. I loved this so much. It's a queer story about like basically unrequited love, and it's so interesting the way that they do it, where like the two main characters are rarely in scenes with each other, but there's so much tension. I loved it. And I think there's a movie. I have to look that up. But oh, yes, 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 Lie With Me. The next one was Long Island. I it's fine. It was just kind of boring, if I'm being honest. Like, it wasn't bad. It just, like, nothing happened really. It just kind of sat there. Wasn't my jam. Wasn't my jam. Wasn't my jam. Oh, In Tongues. Yes, I loved it. It is like a gay coming of age in New York City. I think in the 90s. It's, or early 2000s, maybe. It's been a hot minute since I read it. But yeah, early 2000s. So much fun, and just this great exploration of like different generations of gay men and the friendships that evolve from that, and like what that looks like and what the expectations are from both sides. It's really interesting, and I thought it was really well done. Okay, the next one was Wednesday's Child by Yi Young Lee. Loved. And I loved her Book of Goose. This one is a collection of short stories that are all about motherhood and and loss. It was, so it's a heavy collection, but I really enjoyed myself. I think it was shortlisted, or one of the finalists, I think, for the Pulitzer. So yeah, I really loved this collection, and if you liked Book of Goose, I think you'll enjoy this. And if you've read this, you'll love Book of Goose. Absolutely. Okay. The next one I read was Orbital. It won the Booker. It wasn't my jam. It wasn't my jam. I'm really sorry. I listen. I felt like it, the idea was we are nothing within the vastness of space, and also simultaneously we are everything, and that is beautiful, but I don't know if I feel like it expanded upon the idea more than that. Is the writing beautiful? Yeah, the writing is gorgeous, but I don't think it took me past that concept and that idea. And I would just argue that like we've been talking about that, like what I needed, something new, I wanted something different, but that's just me, and that's fine. Listen, there's clearly something that I missed because it won. So cheers, go with God, giving it its flowers. But It just wasn't my jam. Okay, the next one that I read was The Safe Keep. This was one of my top reads of 2024. I loved The Safe Keep. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It is just, it was the sapphic tale of the year. And I'm telling you, there's a nice couple twists in there. I thought it was really well done. It was beautifully written, so sexy. Like, I was blushing while I was reading it on the treadmill. Like, I really enjoyed myself. The next book I read was The Order of Things by Sarah Gormley. I loved this book, and there's a section um, in the middle. It's a memoir, and in the middle of it, she talks about the death of her mother, and it is so powerful and so moving. I mean, it's the whole thing is lovely. I really, really enjoyed it. I've suggested it to friends; they loved it. I think it's a really powerful memoir, but the way that she captures those moments before her mother's death and that time right during her mother's death is just so incredible. She also was having a little viral moment, I think over on the Instagrams, about this cookie recipe at the back of the book where Martha Stewart fired her and she used that time to inspire herself to create the perfect chocolate chip cookie recipe. And y'all, I've made it twice. I screwed it up the second time, but the first time those were good cookies, and I can't bake, and I can't cook. Like I think I use like a ninja blender to do part of it. So like if I can do it, y'all can crush it. But yes, pick up The Order of Things. Loved it. All right, I read The God of the Woods. It starts strong. It starts strong. But what's disappointing is that I don't think it delivers. So you read this honker of a book and it does not deliver at the end. It's frustrating. I think that the big twist and the mystery of it all is like kind of lame. I also feel like you read these mysteries to like build up to the end. And then you have that like big reveal. And it did that, but the reveal was kind of, yeah. And then immediately after it restated the reveal, which undercut the bad reveal. So then it just undercut itself every which way from Tuesday. And it was like, this is the whole reason we read the book. It wasn't, I don't know. It wasn't my jam. There are other better ones. The next one was Held. I respect this book. It was not the book for me. I didn't like about halfway through it kind of lost me and I didn't love it, but I respect the hell out of it. It's beautifully written. I respect the way it was crafted. I respect what it was trying to say. It just wasn't for me. So I would suggest looking into it because of how much I respect it. It just didn't land for me. Y'all, I normally finish every book that I start, which is perhaps a character flaw, but I normally push all the way through. I could not. I could not. And I think this author and I will no longer share space. She stands alone with this one, and that's okay. Like, that's fine if it's just me. I know in my DMs, I was not the only one who did not DNF it, so that's fine if the rest of the world wants to pretend like they read it, or if it's just me and the folks in my DMs. Great, but this was not my jam. This is not my jam. Won't do it. Won't do it ever again. And then I read Wild Houses. I enjoyed it. It's like so Irish in the sense that like the ending is such a non-ending. It was, I think it was longlisted for the Booker. I enjoyed it. I thought it was nice. I wanted a little bit more tension at times. I wanted a little bit, like the stakes were high, but I feel like they were written in a way that kind of undercut them a little bit. Like I always felt like something was going to be okay. And I think that it needed to have this sense of like, is someone going to be in like major trouble? And I didn't really get that. But I enjoyed it. Like, I mean, I had a nice time. It was fine. Also on the Booker list, Creation Lake. Y'all, no. I don't think this book knows what it was trying to be. It was like trying to be a mystery book, but then like wasn't, but then kind of was, but then was trying to be a history book, but like what? And I don't think it all came together, like the different elements that it was trying to be to become something new, out of those other genres. Like it just didn't work. And like she went from zero to giving the Gluck Gluck 3000 in a way that was just like so jarring. And I'm all for that, but like we gotta have a little build up. It was wild, and I did not like it. There was nothing about it I liked. And y'all, I was in quite a reading slump because immediately after that, I read Rejection. And y'all, also for me, this was not it. This is a collection of stories, and Listen, that's a lie. It started out strong. The first half, great stories. I think they were really successful. Then it took a dip, and then it nosedived. So listen, if you wanted to read the first couple stories, I think they're absolutely worth it. I will say that. But like past that, what are we doing? Where are we going? What's going on here? I No. The next book I read was Art Evenings. I made friends with, I think his publicist on TikTok, and they were so kind to send me an advanced reader copy. I thought this title was so quiet and respectful and just so beautiful. Like it's this queer story, and even the boy's mother turns out to be queer, and like it's just, I think it's just lovely. I have a friend who read it in a book club, and they all hated it apparently because it didn't move fast enough. Like if you need something that's action packed, this is not it. If you want like a beautifully written story that's like a an exploration of like a specific character, yeah, this is it. I loved this. It got me out of my reading slump because I was reading what, three, four, five of them that were just like no goes right there in a row. So this brought me on my reading slump, which is maybe also why I have like a special place for it. But loved Our Evenings. The next one I read was Colored Television. Yeah, listen, I liked it. I read this for a book club. Some folks didn't love it. I thought it was great. I thought it was really interesting. I think she's married to Percival Everett, if I'm correct. A really interesting take on writing and like writing for television and like what that whole world looks like. And it's like a little surrealist, if I remember correctly. I loved it. I thought it was, yeah, I enjoyed myself. Again, it wasn't life altering, but I really enjoyed color television. The next was Ghost Roots, which was, I think, shortlisted for the National Book Award. It's a collection of Nigerian stories. I loved it. I still think about some of these stories. They are still with me. They are about life and relationships and death. And I think I think it's a powerful, powerful story collection. Highly recommend. Then I read The Friend. A friend suggested it. Listen, I thought it was lovely. I don't know if I fully understand everyone's like adoration for it. I think it was fine. I am surprised to find out that it won the National Book Award, or I was surprised to find out that it won the National Book Award. But yeah, I didn't dislike it. I thought it was nice. And then this one, I'm counting this. So there is a theatrical experience that they read um, The Great Gatsby, and I'm trying to think of what it is called. And theater performance reads great. So like that's like the whole experience. GATS is what it's called, GATZ. Um, and they just, the whole script is just reading The Great Gatsby from beginning to end, and it's a like full day. I think there are multiple intermissions. There's also a dinner break. So I'm counting that as having read The Great Gatsby because I had someone read it to me, and on acting it out on stage. And I will say like I think it's the party scene where they like go and they meet at the gas station and they have the party upstairs. Oh my god, that was so incredibly done. I loved it. But yeah, so yeah, and yeah, of course, hello, read The Great Gatsby. Yes. The next one was All Fours. Okay, if you're gonna read it, you have to commit to finishing it because the first part is where I've heard a lot of people abandon it, and I understand why you would, but it does not come together until later in the book. We can have a whole conversation about the success of that approach, fine, but like if you want to enjoy the book or understand even what it's about, I think you have to get through part two at least. Yeah, it's about the perimenopausal experience and begs the question like, what would happen if you gave in to every erratic desire and emotion and impulse that came with that experience? I loved it. Oh, and then I read Stone Yard Devotional. I love this book. It's a woman, she goes to like live on this kind of like religious compound, and her past comes and kind of confronts her a little bit. And she like is spending time trying to come into herself and understand the world around her. And like as her emotions are heightening, the whole place is getting infested with rats. I don't know. I really liked it. It was quiet. It's a quiet book, but I really liked it. And then I read my first Sally Rooney, Intermezzo. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. At the core of it, it's really about saying and hearing "I love you," and that at this point in time, when especially when I read this book, I needed that, and I thought it was really beautiful. Word to the wise, she writes one of the brothers real funky. I forget if it was Peter or Ivan. Peter. Peter sure it's real funky. And it starts from Peter's POV. And so you're like, if I'd never read Sally Rooney and I was like, is this how she writes? I was like, yikes. But just get through him. I think it's part of his like weird drug usage. If you really like look at the way she treats his character and the way he like speaks, I think it's when he gets wonky, it's directly related to that. But after that, it's fine. Just push through that first section of Peter's. Then I read Hong Kong's The White Book. Loved it. It's a meditation on the color white and the idea of white and white objects, and it's really fascinating. It's easy, short read, and I think it's a great introduction to her and her style. Because in 2025, I read her We Do Not Part, and I'm so excited to read The Vegetarian for AAPI month. Then I read Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Message. Yes, absolutely pick it up. I think it is a difficult and important read. I will say there's this pattern that he has where he will like take a diversion and then try to take something that's seemingly disparate and tie it back in. And I don't think he does that successfully. And that seems to be a pattern throughout it. But aside from that, I still think it's worth a read. And I think it discusses and delves into a lot of really interesting and necessary conversations we should be having. Then I read Betsy Lerner's Shred Sisters. At the core, this is really about mania and how mania impacts all of those around it. Those are who are affected by mania, how that impacts, those they come in contact with. And I just really loved it. And if you go follow Betsy on TikTok, sure, I love her TikTok. She like reads her journals and she's so kind. Yeah, but I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really well done book. And it's fascinating. Halfway through, one of the sisters starts to make choices, and I was like, this doesn't work. And I was like, how am I going to talk about this? And I was like, this character wouldn't do that. And then I took a step back and I said, wait, Miss Ma'am, the character absolutely would do that. What she's doing is not doing what you would expect of her. And I realized I had turned into the parent, and we took a whole moment with that. We had to a little meditate on that and figure out what that meant for ourselves. But would highly recommend the Shred Sisters. Then I read The Plot. I read the sequel in 2025, and the sequel made me enjoy the plot more. I liked the sequel. I mean, I liked the plot. I did not like the sequel. And so all that said, I think it's worth it. I do think that like the big twist is projected way in advance, but the author does a really cool job of building tension by integrating these like sections of this book that are like is like the central plot point of the book. So yeah, I think it's worth it. It's a good mystery, and I guess I have a feeling it'll be turned into a television show. She wrote the book that The Undoing is based on, that Nicole Kidman HBO miniseries. It's good. And I read Good Material because it was one of the New York Times top 5 fiction books of 2024. And I just, listen, no. 250 pages from the perspective of this just like insufferable man. We all have an insufferable man in our lives. Like, we do not need to read 250 pages of one with no redeeming qualities and no growth. And I just think that the growth gets tacked on at the end. I didn't get it. It wasn't my jam. I didn't enjoy it. Then I read Small Things Like These. It was so lovely. And if you have not read it, I absolutely highly recommend picking it up. I think the movie recently came out. I can't wait to watch it. It's so tight, but there's so much there. There's so much there to unpack. And I think that she just does a really beautiful job. And I'm dying to talk to someone about this and what the ending means, and like thinking that you're doing good and what is good and what does doing good mean and like what are the limits of that, and loved it. Then I read the Cher memoir, part one. Part two, I think, is coming out in 2025 in the fall, I think. Loved. I mean, listen, it's Cher. I will say the details. Just be ready. We only get to, I think, the early 80s in these, like, what, 400 pages or something like that, which is great. I appreciated them. But yeah, so just know that going in, it was fun. To her own admission, even in the book, like she didn't write it, but like her voice is everywhere. Like there are little digs at Sunny throughout it that I think are super fun. Like I think it's absolutely worth picking up. And the last book that I read in 2024 was Foster, also by Claire Keegan. It was a lovely story. I will say I do think that Small Things Like These was more successful, but I thought it was a really nice tale. The ending, again, it's like, what happened? I'm dying to know. Yeah, I think it's really fascinating, and it was a great way to end the year. So yeah, we did it. And I don't think I talked too much about all of them, did I? I try to stay relatively succinct. So yeah, those are all of my reads from last year. I Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know if you have any more questions. If you want me to go into more detail about any of them, I can absolutely hit you up in the comments. Otherwise, yeah, I think I did a good job of like letting you know which ones I would suggest and which ones you could leave on the shelf. Let me know what you think, and I'm so excited to keep reading with you next week.